So to get us started, please welcome Christine Bergeron, who's the CEO and President of Vancity and a member of the Principles for Responsible Banking Board. Christine.
Good morning. Thank you, Liesl, for the very kind introduction. It's great to finally meet you in person. And a big thanks to the rest of the UNEP FI team. All of you put a huge amount of work in behind the scenes all year round, and really to help us move the important initiative forward. So thank you very much. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals outline a transformative vision for a better world. And as many of you here know, the financial system has a critical role to play in bringing this vision to life. As UNEP FI members, we've made pretty remarkable progress together. So we've aligned on net zero emissions targets for 2050, measuring financed emissions, improving emissions quality, the quality of the data and the accuracy, and having a sustainability focus as part of our business strategy. It's an impressive start and certainly a far cry from where we were a decade ago, and it speaks volumes to what we can all achieve. Of course, the reality is that the world needs us to keep going. Collectively, we make thousands of decisions every day about who and what gets financed and who and what doesn't. And in aggregate, these decisions really do determine the economy of the future. So I've been asked to offer a few thoughts, to open today's session, to reflect on where we've been and also where we need to go. And in doing that, I always start thinking about people and what they need from us. So I started my career as a venture capitalist more than 20 years ago now, investing in clean technology. And I've worked in the field of sustainable finance virtually my entire career. And so back when I started, despite some interest in clean technology, the vast majority of dollars were ignoring the most important global problems. So if you look back on where we've been, we've certainly seen a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship. We did get a lot of connected technologies that have absolutely transformed our world. But arguably, we did not put money and effort and innovative thinking towards actually solving global issues. Which means that today we have high concentrations of wealth. It's very early for me. I'm a West Coaster. High concentrations of wealth, runaway inequality, and a planet that just might not be able to sustain us all. So I realized early on that our traditional models of how the economy should work are actually flawed, and they're not serving as many of us as they should. So as financial institutions, have we made good progress or not? Well, we've moved from putting small dollars into clean tech to major global commitments, disclosure of financed emissions, so it's certainly good progress. But we do need to accelerate two things, I think. One is our thinking about how we integrate climate resilience with financial resilience and financial inclusion. And two, we need to accelerate how we recognize and respond to the interconnection between climate, biodiversity, financial health and inclusion, community strength and well-being, and human rights. Resiliency is something we've been paying a lot of attention to lately at Vancity. When we look at what is top of mind for people, the issues that they're worried about, the idea of resilience runs through all of them. They're global challenges, of course, but they're felt on a very, very personal and local level. In research that we partnered on recently, nearly 1/3 of British Columbians, so the province that I currently call home, 1/3 reported being impacted by extreme weather events in the last 2 years. 1/3. And more than half of those who reported that impact also reported high financial stress. So an example of that, of such a climate event, was in June of 2021. More than 600 British Columbians died from exposure to heat from the heat dome that we experienced. The people most affected were elderly, people with disabilities, lower incomes, people without adequate housing who couldn't afford air conditioning, couldn't get to a cooling center. And on the one hand, it's a bit of a dramatic example for Vancouver because it isn't supposed to happen there. And on the other, we know that many, many more deaths in other parts of the world have arisen from climate-related events. So we've seen this pattern repeat itself. There is sufficient clarity on the interconnection between climate resilience and financial inclusion for us to be responding. And especially now that we're seeing financial resilience eroding for a lot of people. And to be clear, this reality is worse for low-income households, but isn't limited to them. June of last year, 78% of households in Canada said that they're not financially resilient. That was before rate hikes. And even if you think maybe that survey was flawed, maybe the responses, aren't 100% accurate, even if you cut the numbers in half, that's still a lot of people trying to respond to global shocks that they're not responsible for, but they do have to deal with. So again, my examples are local, but it's similar elsewhere, with large numbers of people who don't have the resilience to face climate events. One's ability to respond to climate impacts is greatly reduced when you're living paycheck to paycheck, when your job is precarious, without a predictable wage, if you don't have stable housing. And we've seen over and over again how when climate disasters strike a community, people with resources get safety, and they can rebuild, while people without resources get stranded and fall further behind. And so these realities are the result of a system and the flaws within it, and more people, especially young people, are feeling that that system isn't working for them. During the COVID emergency, our institutions, including many of us in this room, we took decisive action to actually address people's needs. Why can't we deal with other crises in that same way? And with this growing realization that resilience is a highly interconnected problem, our financial system needs to shift, and fast, to a system that's centered on people and their needs. I'll just provide a couple of examples of what I mean in practice. When it comes to climate, our first priority at Vancity, the organization that I lead, is to protect our most vulnerable neighbors from extreme weather, floods and heat, and from the rising cost of gas heating. And so our teams went into community to create solutions that could help. So we're providing $5 million over the next 3 years to help nonprofit housing providers in BC to retrofit their buildings. We need stable, affordable housing. That's very much a known issue, but it also needs to be climate ready and resilient. We're also supporting First Nations, like the Musqueam, to install heat pumps, improve energy efficiency, and to develop climate and resilience plans. And we're providing our broader membership with free advice from experts to help retrofit their homes. People want to take action. They just usually don't know where to start. So do we need more innovation? Absolutely. Do we need to accelerate it? 100%. But can it be done? It can be. And so we do all of this from our perspective because how we get to our net zero goal is just as important as actually getting there. And the key is to bring people into the equation. First, it's at the heart of the SDGs and our commitment to sustainable finance. But most importantly, we should do it because it's what people need from us today. Thanks very much.